Hey y'all, welcome back to Keeping Up with Christy. I'm Christy, and on this episode I'm going to be showing a couple of menu ideas that I have that we had for dinner at our home. And I'm starting this first one out with about 2.5 pounds of ground beef. I'm using a lean ground beef. And I'm adding a couple of eggs to it, some seasoning of salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, and some breadcrumbs. I'll have the full recipe down below in the description box. You just go down and at the title, you hit that down arrow. If you're on your computer, I think it'll say show more. And when you drop that down, you'll see either links to recipes that I use, or you'll actually see that I've written it out. I also added in a little Worcestershire sauce, and to be honest, I would have added a couple of tablespoons, but I emptied the bottle. During quarantine, we're not always having exactly what we need on hand for a regular recipe, but added what I had. And I also added in some Mrs. Dash for a little more flavoring, since I didn't have all the Worcestershire sauce that I would have wanted. So I'm mixing this all up. It's kind of like a meatloaf mix. Probably less breadcrumbs. I think I only put about 1/3 of a cup to 2.5 pounds of meat, and I would use more than that and more eggs if I was making my meatloaf. But I am just going to measure this out with a 1/4 cup measure. You could either make meatballs out of this, or what I do a lot of times, and I did on this night, is I round it off and then I flatten it out, almost like the size of a small slider. And once I get all of my patties made out, then I will pull out my pan and start browning them on both sides. And I'm basically making hamburger steak with an onion gravy. So hamburger steak, but making them slider size, smaller. And the only reason why I do this, I have to roll out more, but they're faster to cook. I don't have to worry about if the inside is cooked because they're nice and thin, where if you do a meatball, sometimes they'll dry out. So I don't like that, but I want to make sure I get them cooked and cooked quickly, because I fixed for 7 full adults. We're all home now since everybody's home from college, and everybody's always at the house. I always have 7 full adults that I'm cooking for. So here I am getting my just regular like canola oil in the pan. I heat that up, and I usually keep it on, I think it's like 8 on my stove top. It's like a medium high heat, and then I will start browning them on one side. I usually take about 3 minutes, flip them over once they're browned, and do the other side for 3 minutes. So real simple and easy. And then I'll show you, once I have them all browned up and in another casserole dish that's clean, then I'll make the gravy in the pan. So once everything has been browned, you can see the little bits of meat and everything that have been left behind that are stuck to my pan. That's no problem. That's going to help make a really good, delicious gravy. Because I was using lean ground beef, I need some fat in the pan. So instead of adding more oil, I decided to go with a few tablespoons of butter. And I'm going to cook my onions first for a little bit and let them kind of get soft and translucent. Then I will add the flour in. So, you know, just like making any kind of gravy, you want pretty much equal parts fat, in this case the butter, and your flour. So I used a few tablespoons of butter. I use a few tablespoons of flour. And then you just want to make sure that you cook that flour up. I heard somebody one time describe it on Food Network that you just kind of want to smell the nutty flavor that flour will take on. I don't know that it smells like nuts necessarily. I just think that you can smell a toastedness to it. And maybe that's what they were trying to say. But you want your flour to be cooked. You want this on a lower heat, certainly not as high as you had it to cook up your hamburger patties, but a low heat, and you just want to give it time to make sure that it is cooked, because you don't want that raw flour taste. Then once you add in your broth, and I'm using beef broth here, and I had 2 cups of it. Also, I like to heat it up in the microwave to make sure it's nice and warm when I add it, because that'll help the gravy thicken faster. But that's when you're going to get all the bits off of the bottom of your pan. And so you want to make sure that you're scraping that up, because what's on that pan stuck to it is not burnt. It's not bad. It's actually flavor. And so once that is all incorporated and it thickens up, I just pour that over the top of my hamburger steak. I cover it with some foil and stick it just in the oven on low, like 170 degrees, I think, just to keep it warm, because it's fully cooked and everything. I'm just gonna wait to get my sides made. So speaking of sides, what I decided would go great with hamburger steak and gravy is, of course, mashed potatoes. And so this was the first time I had ever tried making homemade mashed potatoes in my Instant Pot. So this is the Pioneer Woman's recipe, and I will link that down below.
Right on your list, babe.
And the only thing I will tell you is that right here, I'm including this clip of what happened after I got my potatoes and water in there. It's like 3 pounds of potatoes. You just cover them with water, and boy, when these things release their steam, it was crazy. It was spraying everywhere and really hot, and things don't normally spray like this when you put it to venting. So all I did was throw a towel over it, and that made sure I didn't make a huge mess in my kitchen. So once it was done venting and I was able to open it, then I'll just take those potatoes and drain them, and then throw them back in the pot on warm. And I'm putting in a stick of butter, seasonings of salt and pepper, and you know, you kind of have to use a lot of salt when it comes to potatoes. And then I'm actually gonna, and this is again Pioneer Woman's recipe, put cream cheese. And normally we just do the butter and milk or heavy cream, but she adds in a couple of ounces of cream cheese, and it was delicious. We loved it. I mean, of course it's gonna be delicious, but anyway, the heavy cream, we had that on hand. If you don't, you could just always add some milk, but the higher the fat in the milk, the better the potatoes are going to be. They're also going to be terrible for you. So if you want to lighten it up, you could use skim milk and less butter and lighten those potatoes up, of course. But we smashed them up then and made sure, and you know how it is just whenever you're making homemade mashed potatoes, you kind of have to take a look at them, see what they're going to absorb, and if you need to add, I always taste it. And then if it needs more salt or pepper, add that in. If it needs a little more milk, then make sure and add that in to get it to the creaminess consistency that you like. These were delicious. We've now made them like, I don't know, 3 or 4 more times since I made them that first night, and yum. So our meal on that quarantine night was comfort food all the way. We had our mashed potatoes, our squash casserole, and then of course the hamburger steak with onion gravy. And I was able to just kind of get everything ready and keep it warm, so when everybody came in and was ready to eat, we had it, and it was delicious. So next, on to one of our favorite Mexican dishes that we tend to all get when we go out to eat Mexican, or if we get takeout. We do pollo con queso, which is just chicken with cheese sauce. So this is how I make it at home. I've been making this at home probably for a couple of years. I even will make it sometimes for guests when we have large crowds over. My brother, his wife, their kids, and his mother-in-law all came over one night. I made up a big batch of this, threw it in the crock pot, kept it on low because I could make it ahead of time, kind of clean up the kitchen, get ready for company, and it was just sitting there waiting for us. It's delicious. Like, you can make it ahead, throw it in the crock pot to keep warm, whatever. But it's really good, and everybody seems to love it. So what I've done is I'm just taking, these are boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and I cut off the fat that might be on there or whatever, extra globs of that, take that off. I've got some a pan heating up with some oil, and I'm just taking our homemade taco seasoning and coating the chicken thighs with that have been cut up into like 1-inch pieces, and I'll throw it over there and let it start cooking, again on like medium high. And then meanwhile, I can continue to break down my chicken chicken and get it seasoned. So then as I just stir and cook in the pot, I'll be able to get that next batch in there next. So while that's working, I also will start on the sides, which in this case for tonight is going to be some long grain, slow cook rice. And so the Instant Pot is great for this. We like to put in 2 cups of rice. That's enough for 8 servings, and it's just a rounded number for us that have 7. And then when you use 2 cups of rice, you need 4 cups of water. You'll also want to season it, salt or pepper, butter, whatever you want to put in your rice. And then you put the lid on, set it to sealing, and the Instant Pot is pretty simple because it has a rice button. You just push that, it sets itself for 10 minutes, and there you go. It's on and it'll be ready and waiting on us. So now I have finished the chicken. I have it all on the side in the pan, and I'm going to start a roux for my cheese sauce. So I had seen this recipe done with all kinds of different cheeses, or buying the queso cheeses, like Velveeta white cheese and stuff like that. And then I saw this one recipe, I don't know, I can't even find it anymore, where they used white American cheese slices. And so I tried it, and that's what I found that I liked. So you start with making a roux of your equal parts butter and flour. So I did 1/4 cup of each. Again, the recipe will be down below in the description box. And then while that's cooking, I also add in a 4-ounce can of green chilies. Now these little things, they're not hot and spicy, so if you want hot and spicy, you could instead chop up some like pickled jalapenos. I've done that when we didn't have the green chilies, and my kids think it's too spicy, but I think it's perfect. So if you like, or you could do half and half maybe if you wanted to, if you wanted it kind of in the middle of the road. But basically you just put those green chilies in, stir everything around, you add in your couple of cups of milk, and then you start putting in white American sliced cheese singles. My mom will stand in there and she'll unwrap them for me. I think we use like 17 slices usually for our 2 cups of milk based roux that we make. And then you just start putting them in there and have it on a low temperature again, and you're just mixing in that cheese and letting it melt. So the cheese thickens it, but also the fact that you started with your butter and flour roux, that helps to have it thicken up. And so then once you've let it thicken up nice, then I salt and pepper, and I will usually salt and pepper and then taste it and see if I need a little more. You know, you can always put more in, it's hard to take it out. So I'm always kind of careful with how I season, but I don't really have measurements. It's just basically to taste. Have y'all seen that trick where you take your little salt and pepper shakers? If you rub your salt shaker on the butt of your pepper shaker, it makes the pepper come out. I don't know. I did it that night. I think I saw it on Facebook. We learn everything from Facebook, I think, whether it's real or not real, but that thing worked. So anyway, I got my chicken back on the heat with all the chicken now is cooked in the pan, and then I just add some of that queso sauce into it, and I'll turn it down to low and let it just hang out until we are ready to serve. So speaking of ready to serve, here we are. We've got our chicken. We have our extra queso. I just put it in a little bowl on the stovetop on low so it stays ready and warm. We have refried beans that we've heated up. And then of course, you know, we have that rice. And so we just serve our chicken and cheese over the rice. I'll even put a little cheese sauce over our beans if you want it that way, or over some chips. You can have some tortilla on the side to dip into that chicken and cheese. It's all so good and reminds me a lot of what we get at the restaurant. So thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell so you are reminded when I put up a new video, and hope you all stay safe, stay well. See you soon.